So Ciarán Cannon, the latest Gael TD, to announce he's not going to run in the next election. And there's kind of two strands to this story, Larkin. There's the kind of the Fine Gael story that Ivan Yates, who was filling in for Pat this week, kind of was very focused on this morning, and the damage done to their party by so many people not running in the next election. But then what I kind of find more interesting is the reasons Ciarán Cannon gave, which was just the kind of one of the reasons, the toxicity of the kind of the body politic and where they operate.
Yeah, and Ciarán Cannon, I suppose, is the example of this now, because he has overtly called it out. You know, the others you might say, well, they're aging into it anyway. Would they have gone anyway? But Ciarán Cannon has basically said one of the reasons he's going is he's been in it for 20 years and there's a coarseness and a toxicity that has seeped in. And I think we can all feel that. I mean, in the last 12 months, 2 years, like it's quite visceral, actually. You can see it, that it has seeped in. And you can totally understand where he's coming from. If you're anyway on the fence, you'd wonder, why would you? And it's not just, I think, being a politician. It's being a good politician, really, being a vocal politician. Because if you put your head above the parapet and are actually active, you're going to get more of that coarseness, more of that toxicity, and more of that abuse. So I was totally unsurprised to see it. I think we'll probably see more of it. And I think until we get to the point where we're able to look at it and say, right, okay, there is an edge to this, which is the real edge. It's the, almost that anti-lockdown, anti-immigrant, the cameras in the face coarseness that we do see. But there's another version of it as well that has seeped in that feeds that, which is just the anybody I disagree with is bad or is wrong or is purposefully trying to make my life worse. And it's you can't just be wrong about something, you have to be morally wrong about it. And the other side, and I think that element of it, which is wider spread than the cameras in the face shouting abuse, is what probably can be tackled better. You can't deal with the edge. You can stop it growing. But I do think we need to be able to disagree with anybody in politics. Like 100%. You can look at anybody who's there, and I feel the vast majority of them do want to do well. Whether you agree with them politically or think they're acting in the right way, they want to do well. And there's too many of us, or too many people, who default to the other side is morally wrong rather than just misguided.
Who would do it? To kind of ask you the question that Laura poses. I mean, that's where you're left, isn't it?
I had a very interesting, on the Inspire podcast a couple of weeks ago, I had a really interesting chat with Ivana Bacik, right? And it just made me even more interested to read Ciarán Cannon's statement today, where he actually said that women, fare worse than men. And he called out the fact that social media is giving a voice to the voiceless, which is great in lots of respects. But, the toxicity that he was talking about, it follows you home. It's in your family's lives. It's in their faces, because there's no switch off button with the social media. And the fact is, he said, he feels that women are unfairly targeted, in particular in political circles. I don't know who'd be a politician. Like, it's a poison chalice, really, isn't it? I mean, you can't do right for doing wrong, and whatever your political standpoint is or whatever party you support, you should be able to have a debate without being absolutely vilified and without having your family dragged into it. And it's frightening.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point, Lorcan, you raise about kind of the less extreme end of the criticism and that kind of tribalism that seeps into it almost. You know what I mean? That it doesn't almost matter what that guy says. He's my guy and you're not my guy, so I am automatically opposed to it. At the same time, the extreme end of it, and I know what you're saying. I mean, you can't kind of legislate for kind of the extreme element in society to a degree, but that is what puts people off. You know what I mean? The idea of, particularly if young, we're all talking about kids, our own kids. If you have young kids at home, you're considering getting into it, and you think, hold on, are one of these lunatics going to turn up at my home, standing outside the driveway? They have at Simon Harris's house and Paul Murphy's house, and I've got young kids in there, and all they're doing is they want you to walk outside, and then they'll hold a camera in your face, they'll scream abuse at you. It doesn't matter how you respond. Don't respond, do respond, say something clever, say nothing at all. All they want is content. They're just creating content.
It's frightening, but at the same time, like Ciarán Cannon today, like when he announced his decision, he did say that he's going to keep working for the betterment of his community and stuff like that. He's just not going to be in the political sphere anymore. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who kind of take that approach now, that they're kind of saying it's not worth it. Like I'll operate in, I don't know, education. I will help my community in, social work or something like that. It's not putting everyone off. Like, we had Nina Carberry come out last night, the champion jockey. She's now running for European elections for Fine Gael. So there are still people out there. It remains to be seen whether she sticks with it or not. Now that she's kind of nailed her colours to the terrace, so to speak. But it's not a job I'd do. I don't think. I know a few people who grew up in families who have political parents and stuff like that, and cheapers, they had to put up with a lot over the years.
Yeah.
And that was years ago.
And I think there's an extra layer to it. It's not just them showing up outside your house, which is obviously like a horrendous thing to be worried about. But I would think if you got kids or family members or whatever, you also don't want them seeing you being called A, B, and C every single day online, on Facebook groups, on, that like no matter what you do, that abuse being there. And it's a relatively small number of people who engage in that. But when you're the target of it, a relatively small number feels very, very
an
loud.
empty vessel can make a lot of noise,
And it feels like a groundswell, or it's because the other side isn't there. Like there's not the other side of, well, the 80% people saying, yeah, you're great, because you don't get that necessarily. So, I mean, obviously social media is a part of it, but I do think it's probably seeped into us culturally.
Where
to a
do you
degree
think
as well.
the kind of the other strand of all this that you highlighted initially, the kind of the less extreme but arguably equally as toxic in the long run version of kind of criticism. What do you put that down to? When did it start? Where did it start? Why?
It's probably always been there to a degree. We probably hear more of it, and I do think as people get more tribal and as we get more divided, and that has happened. I mean, we tend to think of that as, that happens in America and the UK. It has happened here as well. Like, even as a simple example, and it's a small example of it, but I found the whole reaction to the deposit rental scheme, the bottles, bizarre. Like, it's a small change. I don't know if
it's a pain in the backside, Lorcan.
I don't know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing. It seems to be working. But people were so angry about it as a concept.
They were.
Like, they were like, they are trying to ruin my life by making me hold on to my bottles and charging me the 15 cent. And I'm sure there's people now saying, it is a big deal. I think if you're getting angry, not just saying, that's a bit wrong, I'll talk out against it, but getting actually viscerally angry in yourself at something like that, is that not a sign that we all, like, that there's an element of, we need to chill a little bit and assume okay intentions on behalf of the vast majority of people, if only for yourself, if only to stop yourself getting that overheating every day.
Do you think? And I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here, but I mean, are you describing a kind of a growing number of people, or just a cohort of people who get attention and get airtime, and that the vast majority of people are probably still falling into that kind of, I think, category of who acknowledge, yes, fine, I don't agree with what you're saying, but that's absolutely fine. I acknowledge kind of your public service.
I think there is still the vast majority, but it's a smaller majority.
Okay.
I think there is a growing swell in that second cohort. Just see, it's people who are scrolling and seeing things online and then immediately getting angry about it. And I think we've all experienced that consistently. So I think that's grown, but I've no metrics to prove that. I could be
Unplug
totally
the
wrong.
internet.
X
might be the
isn't
solution.
the best place at the best of times.
But then St. Patrick's Day community spirit, you see
There
it
you
there.
go.
So that's the real irony.
Exactly.